Hey everyone, welcome back to Big Strong Book. I'm Reed, and today we're going to be discussing the final 3 chapters of the Dragonbone chair. Chapters 42, 43, and 44. Roughly the last 50 or so pages, 50 pages for sure in the mass market version. I'm not sure how many pages in the trade paperback. But anyway, the last 3 chapters. So we are wrapping up this book today and then immediately tomorrow, because this trilogy and then The Last King of Osten are the sequel series. Every book within each series just follows one. It picks up immediately where the last one leaves off. So no need to do any big rest or anything. So immediately tomorrow we're going to jump right in to Stone of Farewell, Book 2. Anyway, so we begin with chapter 42, Beneath the Uduntree. We have a little scene at the beginning with Guthwolf, the Earl of Uduntree, and Elias. And Guthwolf tells Elias, why do we need to hurry? As he says, Nagleman's a tough nut. You've had a fortnight. I've given you everything. Troops, siege engines, everything. And this is what the king says. I can wait no longer. Tomorrow is Midsummer's Eve. And Guthwolf says, why does that matter? And he just says, today's the last chance. Like, you have to make something happen today. Elias seems wary, Priorate seems like he's anticipating something, and Elias is in anticipation of something as well. But then we jump back to Simon and the guys, Simon and the boys, as they continue their way across the icy glaciers of Ermsheim. And they are under constant danger because of ice falls and avalanches that keep happening on this mountain. And it says here, Simon, in one of the examples, Simon heard the pitch of the wind, which had been a low, steady whistle for hours, rise to a shriek. He felt a tug, then a hard pull, and dug his fingers through the powdery snow into the icy pack below. A moment later, a crash of thunder banged painfully in both his ears. There's storms. Everything that just seems hellish. There are the 7 of them: Jakiri, Einai, Sludig, Hasten, Grimric, Benevik, and Simon. It's just hell what they're going through. So eventually, Simon has a dream where he dreams that it is Midsummer's Eve, which it is. But he's just kind of out of sorts of it. And Jariki gives him, shows Simon a mirror that can be used for seeing things. And Jariki is talking to Simon about this, and Simon mentions that he looked through this mirror when they were in Jariki's hunting lodge, and he could see Miriamel, but it seemed like a dream. And he says this mirror, it is said to be a scale of the greater worm, a dragon. Men grow while the great worms and others diminish. And Jariki, it's a nice character moment here. Jariki shows Simon the image of summer through the glass, or as he says, a true summer. Enke Shaose, the last and greatest city of the summer. Is long crumbled by now. Really gives Simon an interesting perspective on the time that is related to everything. Then eventually, through the days of climbing, three more days after this, they finally reach the Uduntree, this massive spectacle of icicles above them. And they're staring at this and they can't believe. Certainly a culture shock for, maybe Benedict is the only one where you could argue he's not quite as phased, but even he is phased as well. And Simon is freaking out because this is the tower, that icy tower from his dreams. Now he is beneath it. And he's, of course, nervous by this. And they find a cave near it. And the cave says it was scattered with the brown bones of men. They find Sir Coleman's party. And as they're kind of looking through their bundles, they find thorn. The purity of its blackness was unmarred by the colors that sparkled on its edge, as though the blade was so supernaturally sharp that it even sliced the dim light of the cavern into rainbows. Had it not been for the silver cord wrapped around the hilt as a hand grip, it would have seemed to bear no relationship to mankind at all. Then we jump to Utuku, the Norn queen, and her silver mask. As we see Elias coming into contact with her and noting that I will give you what you want. You shall receive what was promised to you. Thank you, O Queen, says Elias, and I shall give you what I have promised in return. And right that I should have mentioned, right as they're kind of looking upon Thorn, then an arrow comes through and strikes Grimrick. So Grimrick is dying. And they get out, and then they eventually move forward, and then they see Ingen Jagger, who has been pursuing them for so long. And he says, "Go away, Zendaya," to Jariki and Anai. "The Queen's huntsman has no quarrel with you. It is these mortals cowering behind who have thwarted me." And Anai lets an arrow in return, and then the huntsmen scatter. But then Ainai goes into the fight, and Simon asks Benedict, what will we do? And Simon has Thorn with him. Haston goes out, says, shouts for Joshua Lackhand. He runs out. And Benedict also runs into the fight. And Simon, it says he lifted the heavy black sword over his head, feeling its great weight dragging at him even as he stumbled forward. It's this massive, massive sword that, again, it seems like something that is not human, or that wouldn't be seen in the world of humans. Holding tightly on Thorn. Nobody seems to notice him. And then where Ingen Jagger stood, and he kind of freezes, the ice dragon, the fabled ice dragon, who they were talking about in previous chapters. They weren't sure if that was just a story. The ice dragon appears. And it centers itself around Simon. And the dragon, Ij Jarjuk, and Simon whirls to see the vast white bulk of Ij Jarjuk bearing down, head flailing from side to side with the motion of the driving legs driving to one side. Away from Driki and Anai, he rolled and came up to his feet. Simon realized he was still carrying Thorn. He lifted it up. It was suddenly light as a willow wand and seemed to sing in his hands like a wind-sawed rope. His mind seemed to float loose inside his body. One hand stole up to Miriamel's scarf at his throat, and then he grasped the silver-wrapped hilt once more. Ijorjuk's head loomed, the gullet a black pit, the eye blue lantern. The world seemed constructed in silence. What should he shout at the last moment of his life? He remembered what Jariki had once said of mortals, even as the frosty musk of the dragon blew down on him, a stench like sour cold earth and whetstones. Here I am, he cried, and brought Thorn whistling toward the baleful eye. I am Simon. Something caught at the blade. A gout of black blood spat at him, burning like fire, like ice, searing his face even as a great white something crashed through and carried him down into darkness. We go back to Naglamund for chapter 43, the Harrowing. News comes in. The siege is pulling out. Daernoth, Isorn, some of the other people on the wall are celebrating. They think that this is it. They are done and they have won the day. But clouds are forming in the distance. Clouds coming towards him. And there's a little scene here with Joshua and Vorsheva. You can understand the squabble of Joshua is still kind of pissed at Vorsheva, his girlfriend, ostensibly here, that for trying to help Miriamel because they have reason to doubt the intentions of Kadrak. But they seem to resolve that for now. And again, they're still not sure what will happen. They're not confident in the ability to find Thorn. Based on a dream he saw where Yarnaga, I believe, says something has happened to the company sent to Ermsheim. I only dreamed, Yarnaga said defensively, but I felt a great rupture, pain and terror, and I felt the boy Simon calling out in fear and anger, and something else. So Joshua believes this to be a sign that the company has fallen, the company that has gone off to find the sword, that they have fallen, that something bad has happened. But Yarnaga didn't say that. He just said something has happened to them, and Simon's voice was strong and calling out for something. And they're no nearer to discovering what happened to the sword memory to Minier. And the storm clouds are moving further and further towards them. It turns to as black as night. And Daernoth sees something and he motions quick for them to get Joshua. A great army had come to Naglamund. Within the storm's swirling mist stood a vast forest of bristling spears. A galaxy of bright eyes gleamed in the darkness. The drums rolled again like thunder, and the storm settled over castle and town, a great billowing tent of rain and black clouds and freezing fog. The white foxes, the Norns. And Bishop Anadis is convinced that this is some sort of divine punishment for going against the king, and they wisely tell him just to tell him to shut up. But then against the mock foil, kind of these figures come up and kill the bishop. And there are these few Norns right out into the open space. They say, "Where's the master of a house of 1,000 nails?" And Joshua's atop the gatehouse, and he says, "I am here. What does such a strange band of travelers want at my door?" "Why, we have come to see how the nails have rusted while we have grown strong. We have come, mortal, to have a little of our own back. This time it is man blood that will spill on the soil of Osten. We have come to pull your house down about your ears." And then there are diggers within the walls. The Buchan, if you remember from the monastery chapter, those terrifying creatures, there's Buchan within the walls. And the Red Hand, the writer confirms he's part of the Red Hand. "We are the Red Hand. We serve no one but Anuliki, the Lord of Storms. Our reasons are our own, as your death will be your own." And then as they kind of, the leader places his arms against the gate and bellows death. And he forced, like with a burst, says a burst of light, a deafening crack louder than drums or thunder. The gate bursts forward and the Norns leap into the walls. And they also have giants with them, so that's lovely. And we now go to Father Strangyard's perspective as he is seeing these horrors around him. It's described as a towering inferno within Naglamund. Hiding in the black depths of a hedge, he saw stout Ethelfirth of Tinset and 2 of his guardsmen smashed to a red pulp beneath the cudgel of a barking giant. He watched trembling as Lord Constable Idgrim bled to death standing upright, swarmed by squeaking diggers. He saw one of the court ladies ripped limb from limb by another of the shaggy Hunan, while another woman crouched on the ground nearby, face blank with madness. Blank with madness. I like that. Eventually, within the dining hall, I believe, Yarnaga, Strangyard, Vorsheva, Gutrun, Isorn, they're all there, along with a smattering of soldiers. And Yarnaga is gravely injured, and he says, the roof of the library fell. The flames, I fear, have taken nearly all. But Strangyard, and I love their, the friendship of Strangyard and Yarnaga. And Strangyard says, "Worse, you might have gone with them, my friend." And Strangyard realizes that there's a hidden passageway leading out of the guard room to the east gate. If we can get there, we may escape up the stile into the Wieldhelm Hills. So they make their way to there as they see the Buchan and the massive Hunan. So eventually they get to the place where they need to go. And, a skull deer and everybody is just fighting like hell to try to get out of there. And again, they get to the door, and they get to one door, they move forward, and then they get they come further on, and then they get to the final door. And Joshua said, "Now we come to it. Either we must find some way to seal this door, or else we must leave enough men behind to slow our pursuers." Einskaldir volunteers first. He says, "I will stay. I've tasted fairy blood tonight." But Yarnaga, who is already injured, says, "No, it is for me and me alone. I am dying. I was not meant to leave Nagelmund. I always knew that. You need only leave me a sword." But he has the strength to close the door. And he says, "Strange to make a friend at the very last to Strangyard." The last they saw was Yarnaga's bright gaze catch the torchlight as he put his shoulder to the door. It swung closed, damping the sounds of pursuit. The bolts inside slid solidly into place. Joshua stood as they made their way out and stared for a long while, sooty face streaked by the rain. His small party huddled, trembling behind him, waiting to take to the path once more. The prince raised his left fist. "Elias, you have brought death and worse to our father's kingdom. You have raised an ancient evil and shattered the High King's ward. You have unhoused me and destroyed much that I love. Now you are king no longer. I will take the crown from you. I will take it, I swear." And finally, we have chapter 44, Blood and the Spinning World. This is a very short 6-page chapter. We begin in Simon's dream, where he almost feels as if he is part of the dragon Yzurjuk. And he sees images of people. He was Simon, yet he was the serpent. He sees Rachel, bent and old. When had she become so small, he thinks. Prince Joshua on a hillside looking down. A small brown man he did not know pulled his flat boat up a stream. Tiamak. A large man, Isgrimner, where was his beard? So he sees Isgrimner. A beautiful old man, his long white hair tangled, sat playing with a crowd of half-naked children. A man it appears we have not met yet, but he sees this man. Miriamel, hair close cropped, looked out from the rail of a ship at the heavy clouds massing on the horizon. A tall Hernestiri woman dressed in black kneeled before 2 cairns of stone in a grove of slender birch trees. Megwin. King Elias, of course, stared into the depth of a wine cup. And then he sees Morghennis, as if shouting, "Beware the false messenger." The face slips away, but for one ghost. A boy thin and awkward. The boy stood on a hillside beneath the moon, staring in horror at white-faced figures in a gray sword. The same boy, older now, stood before a great white tower. A golden light flashed on his finger, although the boy stood in deep and darkening shadow. Bells were tolling, and the roof had burst into flames. The boy's name was Simon, and then his sight faded. Simon wakes up, and to Jariki, and Jariki says the dragon is gone, but not for sure dead. He says, "Dead or not, I do not know, but gone. When you struck it, it tumbled past you and down into the abyss. I could not mark where it fell in the snows and ice of the great deeps. You wielded the sword of thorn like a true warrior, Simon Snowlock." The name of part 3. And he confirms for him. He says, "Anai and Grimric are dead. They have been buried on the Mount Ermsheim. You do not know what it means to bury a mortal in a Sitha together, Saemon. It has been seldom done and never in 5 centuries. Anai's deeds will live until world's end in the dance of years, and Grimric's name will now live with his. They will lie forever beneath the Uduntree. The others have all survived." And so he says, "Where's Binabik? I had the strangest dream." And Hastin comes in, and Hastin said, "We are on Mintahawk, the troll mountain." And Simon's like, "Okay, is Binabik with his family?" And Hastin says, "Binabik and Sludig are under the sentence of death. The king is holding them as prisoners." Simon says, "What, prisoners?" "Sludig is prisoner," Jariki says, "because he is a hated Rimmersman. Binabik, they say, has committed some terrible crime against the Troll King. We do not know what that is." And he calls him Simon Snowlock again, and Simon says, "Why are you calling me this?" And Jariki holds up his mirror, and it says, "In other circumstances he would have been quite taken with the reddish golden whiskers which were coming in thickly all over his face, but his attention was captured by the long scar running up from his jaw, over his cheek and past his left eye. The surrounding skin was livid and new-looking. He touched it and winced, then slid his fingers up to his scalp. A long swath of his hair had turned as white as the Ermsheim snows. 'You have been marked, Sayamon.' Jariki reached out and touched his cheek with a long finger. 'For better or for worse, you have been marked.' Simon let the mirror drop and covered his face with his hands." The end of the Dragonbone share. And as I mentioned, tomorrow we will be reading the foreword. I believe there is a foreword. It's interesting, Ted Williams calls his prologues forewords and his epilogues afterwards. I don't know, it doesn't. Yeah, there's a very short foreword. But then we will read chapter 1, The Music of High Places, tomorrow. So again, Stone of Farewell. One brief thing I have to say about spoilers. So spoilers from here on out. That old man that Simon sees in his dream, I'm assuming that's Chimaris. Makes sense. It said half-naked children, and given he's in Perduin, right, or on one of those islands, so it makes sense I believe that's Chimaris. So really the only major spoiler thing or observation that I, of course, didn't notice the first time, but now pick up on in rereading it. So, the end of Dragonbone share. Let me know what you guys think, and I will see you guys next time to start Stone of Farewell.